Hey everyone, and welcome. Today I am starting the very beginning of an 18th century embroidered pocket. I am using a pattern from Fitting in a Proper by Sharon Bernstein. The original is also an embroidered pocket, although that's not why I picked this specific one out of the three in the book. It is because it was the smallest of the three and what I consider a reasonable size, unlike some of the others, which are monstrously huge. I did a really basic draft of the pattern full size in Illustrator, just following the overall measurements from the gridded pattern. I'm also not using the original embroidery pattern. Instead, I've charted this one up from a couple other original 18th century pieces. It's a little more interesting for me since I'm going to be spending so much time embroidering it. You can see what the original looked like in color on the back cover. I still wasn't that interested in doing that pattern. I am using some... It claimed to be linen when I bought it, but I did buy this off of Amazon, so take it with a grain of salt. I suspect it's more of a linen cotton blend. It is not quite an even weave, but it's close enough. And as you can see, it is a fairly open weave, thin enough that I can see through it. I didn't trace the pattern specifically onto the linen that I'd be embroidering because it is also slightly skewed. Instead, I just traced along the weave to give me my center lines. I also marked the center cross line as well as the top and bottom and the width at what are basically the shoulder points where the pocket starts to narrow as it gets closer to the top. I then gave myself approximately a 1/4 inch margin on either side of where the pocket or where the slit will be in the pocket because I don't want to spend time embroidering where it's going to be covered by the binding anyway. Once I had all of the markings I needed, I just popped this right into my embroidery hoop. This is actually a lap frame, not a table frame, but as I'm probably going to be doing most of the embroidery sitting on the couch, it's not a big deal that it's a little too tall at the moment. One thing I will be including that I didn't chart on my computer and instead just did it up real quickly by hand are initials and a date. As you can see, my initials are AK and the year is 2020. I want to do that right around where the pocket slit will end, so I'm gonna start with that first. Before I do any embroidery though, I need to figure out my thread situation. I am using pattern Nyan, which I am probably saying wrong. Some of this I have purchased myself and some of this I inherited from my mom. She did Bargello before I was born, so even though she stopped doing embroidery when I was young, she never got rid of any of her old threads or anything, so some of what I have is older than I am. These are all wool threads, as the original pocket would have been embroidered with. Because this is something that needs to be on the sturdier side, I want wool which will wear better than silk or linen, and definitely cotton. So as you can see, I have a lot of different colors in various shades and color families, so I'm not worried about not having the colors I want in my stash here. Pattern Nyan comes with basically 3 2-ply strands that you then need to pull apart because for the weight of fabric I am using, I definitely only want 1 2-ply strand of this, not anything thicker. So first I need to separate out a single strand, and then I'm going to put it on a needle and start working on the A in my initial. After doing a couple of the square stitches in the pattern Nyan, I came to the realization that it is actually still a little too heavy even at its thinnest. So I'm going to switch to another type of crewel wool that I have in my collection, which is Appleton, which as you can see is a bit finer. My apologies, I didn't realize that the actual stitching was out of frame, but basically it just looked far too bulky with the style of stitch I was doing there. So I'm just gonna pick out the couple of stitches I did and then start over again in the finer yarn. The stitch that I am using for my initials as well as for the date is basically just a square eyelet stitch. The only difference is I'm not actually pulling the threads tight enough to make an eyelet form. I don't want little holes all over my pocket for while it is going to be inside my skirts. I don't want to risk it catching on anything. This is another option, could have been some type of cross stitch, but I just personally prefer this stitch for when I'm doing square things. Alright, I'm just popping in for a quick second to talk about what I've done so far here. As you can see, I've got the A almost finished. I just ran out of thread before I got to that last square right there. I am not 100% happy with how it looks, I'll be honest. I may or may not unpick it. I think I'm going to get a little bit further into the rest of the embroidery and then decide. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as is, and I'm not going to do the K at this point. I also am not sure if I'm going to put the year under this either. So that's that. The other thing I did was I worked on establishing the flame stitch pattern down at the bottom. It's a little hard to see the white on white, I realize, but you can just make out the outline here, which is let me fold this. Basically, this is the bottom edge of where I started stitching. So I've got the white line coming up here, which is this line here. And an important part of this, actually, let me try something. Yeah, that makes it easier to see if I kind of cross-light it. Okay, so yeah, that makes it much easier to see those white lines. I wasn't sure exactly how wide my pattern repeat would be for this to fit in the pocket. So what I did was I started down here at the center front and I stitched along this line of white, and I went as far as I could until I just kind of eyeball traced from where I had put my side mark and my side mark right here. And I just kind of, I think I used actually a red pencil, which doesn't show up at all on camera, but I kind of used that to trace down to make sure I would stay. And I figured out, you know, how many repeats I would go through, how wide this would be, and then I started working back, and then again from the center front I went around to do this side as well. And I've started adding a little bit of the color into it as well, just to break up so that I can kind of bounce between parts of the embroidery without doing only one thing at a time. Plus, since only half of this fits in my frame at a time, I will need to embroider all of this and then move it up anyway. So, as I said before, I switched from the original pattern Nyan yarn, which I started with, to my Appleton crewel wool, which this is one of them, as you can see. Unfortunately, my Appleton stash is not as big as my Pattern Nyan stash, so I did have to order some colors. They will hopefully be here by the end of the week, probably. But I've got enough that I can, you know, get further along in the pattern. I've got my darkest blue, I've got my lightest pink. I've also got this, which my two yellows, which I can work on with those as well. And I also do have my not quite black. Actually, because this is a skein, I don't actually know what shade this one is, but that'll be, you know, these dark points on the things that kind of look like pencils, you know. So as I said, I've got enough in my stash that I can continue while I wait for the other colors to come. This is going to be a long-term project. I'm not going to be filming it. I'm not going to be posting it on YouTube as I work it, because honestly it's kind of boring, and it would just be, you know, videos of me continuing to embroider. I am going to be posting updates as I make progress on my Instagram, which you can find linked below. And once all of the embroidery is finished, I will definitely make a video of what I do once I have this embroidered and how I turn the embroidered panel into an actual pocket. So my ideal goal is to have this done by the end of the year, but I make no promises. Before I sign off, I just want to add a little announcement. I am going to be participating in CocoVid, which you might have heard of from other fellow costubers. Our current count is, I believe, 138 videos. And one of those will be mine. It'll go up next Saturday on August 1st, because I will be posting that video, and it'll be a slightly longer video than I usually do. I will not be posting a normal Tuesday video this coming week instead. So I hope you enjoy that upcoming video, and I want to thank you for watching this one, and I hope you come back again and watch more videos with me. Bye!